Our last presentation of session A is Erin Meger, who is from the School of Computing and is speaking to us about No Surprises, Building Accessible Assessment Policies from the Start.
Good morning. Great. Hi, I'm Professor Erin Meger from the School of Computing. Before we get into this, I want to situate myself in sort of the types of classes that I teach. So my first few years here, I was in the teaching stream, where I had a load of 6 courses per year, usually 4 and 2. I typically teach our introductory courses in computing, which are huge, typically around 600 across 2 to 3 sections. And I'll do that in the fall and in the winter as well. So I see a lot of students who are brand new to the university system, and just I have a huge volume of students. And I wanted to talk today about building accessible policies from the very beginning. There are going to be things that happen where students need additional support, they need consideration, they need accommodation throughout the term. And the whole purpose of my talk is how can we figure out a way to make sure that all of those decisions have been made before class even starts. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, after my years of experience of having done this and made every possible mistake that you can make. So when we design our courses, I know that everyone here spends a lot of time making sure that the assessments are intentional, they are robust, they are rigorous, they are interesting. Many of us are working towards really well-backed, researched ideas, alternative assessments, authentic assessments, anything that really has that robust and rigor and thoughtfulness. I know that you're all trying to achieve best practices. And so when we come up with these fantastic assessments that we're proud of, when something goes wrong or someone needs a different sort of setting, it can be a challenge because we're so proud of the work that we've done. And so one thing I want to talk about is assessment is constrained by institutional policies, and this is something that I've learned through my work with Dr. Katrina Carbone. And so we have to pay attention to what the university has to offer us, as well as the different types of things that could come up. So one of the major things is accommodations, and thank you, Deb Bruce. I don't know if you're here today, but we had a couple of consultations while I was preparing this talk earlier this year. So there's a couple of common accommodations that I want to just highlight. So this is disability-related absences, maybe out-of-sync test time. Some students can't have evening tests or morning tests, would then shift the day or the time of the assessment. If you're hosting a test on cue, you might have to do these manual time adjustments. Maybe you have to do it for each assessment. Maybe you can figure out how to do it based in the class list. There are some tips and tricks in there. And the up to 7-day extension, which I know we're all familiar with. And so these things happen. Every class has at least a couple of students who have some or all of these accommodations that they require. So we can just assume that these are going to come up for us during the term. The next piece of this is the considerations piece. So these are things like the 3-day short-term considerations. These are things like the long-term considerations. In arts and science, we get this severity indicator to determine whether or not is this something that's going to continue to impact the student once they've returned to class, or is this more of a time-limited situation. And I just want to remind you that as instructors, it's not our role to know what's going on in their personal life. But I do want to let you know that sometimes students do come talk to you, and it's really important that you thank them for that honesty, for that bravery. It's not easy to talk about some of these things that they're going through, and some of them really do need someone to listen to, or to have someone listen to them. So please just arrive with compassion and thank them for that honesty. But it's never your responsibility to understand what that student's going through. The university has systems set up in place through QSAS, and through the consideration services in your home faculty. So it's really important that you push those centralized services. We're going to talk about that soon. But I want to talk about a little bit of a mindset shift here. when we have these assignments and assessments that we're really, really proud of, and somebody comes along and says, oh, I've just got too many tests, I'm too stressed out, I had other things due and I don't want to follow the policy. It can be really easy to fall into this trap of, well, I don't think that's a valid reason, right? Well, I was able to handle 5 classes and 5 midterms and 15 midterms back to back with no break, the engineers understand, yes. And so we did it, so why can't they do it? And the mindset shift here is that there's no such thing as an invalid consideration. If a student says, I was walking to class and I stubbed my toe and now I can't write the test, that actually might have been really hard for that student. You don't know them, you don't know their life. So how can we make sure that we have a system in place that isn't dependent on some sort of adjudication? This is my favorite slide. Alternative grading needs are constant like death and taxes. Something will go wrong for a student in your class. Someone will need something a little bit different no matter how good your assessments are. So how do you build something from the start? So the very first thing to do is know that you are going to have these things come up and figure out a plan. If you put these policies in your syllabus right from the start of the term, not only do you not have to make any more decisions in the middle of the term, which is great, but also the students then know exactly what the expectations are. There's no surprises for them either. There are 2 big headaches that I know that I wanted to highlight here, and that is the up to 7-day extension and then missed in-person tests. And I do call these headaches, and I'm sure that you all have had a headache around at least one of these. The up to 7-day extensions is probably one of the most complicated accommodations that we see. And I know that there's a lot of different understandings of that policy from students and from QSAS and in different departments. So typically the policy does say that it's up to 7 days based on the instructor's discretion, based on the type of assessments, and there's indicators in the policy saying for shorter assessments, maybe this is a couple of days, and for maybe like a full essay, this would be the full 7 days, and you can get into the policy in the weeds, but if you come up with your plan right from the beginning, then a student who has this accommodation can read your policy and say, yep, that works for me, or they can say, no, this doesn't work for me, and go to their QSAS advisor and figure out something with their QSAS advisor and then come to you with a solution. Again, offloading some of that work that you would have to deal with. So I have policy suggestion. All missed assessments require approved documentation, either considerations or QSAS. There's sort of 2 ways you can do this. You can do the policy only. You must have documentation. It must be approved, and it is approved by a centralized service that has nothing to do with me. Or you can take the absolute opposite approach and say, I don't care. I don't care. You declare what you want. You declare that you're not well. You declare, and I don't care. I don't need to see it. You can skip this. You can skip that. You can do all of these different things. And those are kind of the 2 extremes, and I would really recommend you do one of the 2. So I want to talk a little bit about making use of the university's resources. So while I know we all want to move away from final exams are great for dealing with these alternative needs. Excuse me. Because the exams office coordinates all of it. It is so wonderful to just show up and the exam is already happening and all you have to do is answer questions about the material if you even want to do that. And they'll also coordinate the deferred exams, which is great. You just have to give them a list of who's taking the deferred exam. And that's it, and they handle all of the work for you. Love that. We love taking things off of our plate. But I know some of you hate finals, so design a better test. No, I'm not saying that your test isn't good. I'm saying design a test that's maybe not a test. Maybe it's an essay that they can bring their notes in to advance. This past semester, I had an exam where there were 20 short answer marks and 40 marks were long answer questions. And I had given them 2 months to do these 5 long answer questions, and they were able to bring in a cheat sheet, double-sided, with the solutions to those questions on it, and then put that on the exam. And it worked great. I didn't see any discrepancy from that grading compared to a traditional exam. So if you hate finals, you can work around this because the final is really just a time slot. It's not necessarily any sort of indicator of what that actual assessment's going to be. Now, term tests and midterms are not managed by the exams office, so this is on you. I've seen a whole bunch of different things. I personally this year have taken the, if you miss it for any reason, it just moves to the final exam. That's been working really well for me. I know some people who do, you can get one free missed test. But if you have to miss more, then you need considerations. Again, coming back to that policy. For assignments, there will always be people who need more time. Be clear up front about how much additional time. Like I said about the 7-day assessments or the up to 7-day extension, tell them right away. So I did this thing called flex days, which if you saw my talk 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a couple number of years ago, I talked all about flex days. So flex days put the responsibility back on the student. You can give students with the 7-day accommodation additional flex days, additional maximums and minimum flex day amounts. I did this where there was a Microsoft form where they went in and they filled out how many flex days they wanted for each assignment, and then I had all of the data that I needed. And if you have a spreadsheet like that, you can spend as much or as little. I spent none reviewing it. I trusted my students. So if you expect the unexpected, you will have more fairness. Students will better understand their expectations, fewer interim decisions, and decision fatigue. When we're making a lot of decisions on the fly, that is where a lot of bias comes in, and that's a lot of where mistakes can come in, and inequities. Thank you very much. And also shout out to the CTL Course Design Institute that I know is coming up soon.
Thank you for the presentation. There is a false narrative that accessible assessment means that we become less rigorous. My question is, how do you communicate to students or to the colleagues that accessibility is actually a part of good assessment? It doesn't really mean that we should lower our academic standards. Thank you.
That's a great question. I have very, very high standards for my students. But I also try to make the most accessible course that I possibly can. That's my primary thing. I've taught at a lot of other schools, and the way that I push my students here at Queen's is way harder than I've ever pushed at places like Waterloo. And the students here can rise to the occasion in ways I haven't seen before. Just shout out, I like our students. In terms of like communicating that to my colleagues, it's the best I can do is invite them to events like this. I mean, I think there is that false dichotomy of if it's accessible, if it's flexible, then it can't be rigorous, and that's just simply not true.
Thanks for your talk. I have tried something similar, although not for years and years and years, just once in a course where I thought, what if no one had to ever email me? And that's how I, approached it. It was like, what if no one had to ask for something? And I think one of the biggest challenges I encountered is that the communication of that to the students who are not familiar with that being the sort of standard approach. So still receiving all the emails, even though there's flexible deadlines. Can I have an extension? Can I have this? And so I was curious if you could say more about what it's like to set that up for students so they're really, really clear on those policies.
That's an amazing question. So the very first thing I do is I make everything super clear in very plain language in my syllabus. The first day of class is we go through the syllabus, and I obviously will continue to get student questions, and I just I will copy and paste the syllabus and be like, oh, this is already addressed, here's the policy. Thank you so much. It's so great to hear from you. And one of the things that I also like to do is give that extra layer of like, it's so nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for emailing me, so that they feel less afraid to email you if there's something else that comes up. So it's not just like, you need to read the syllabus. Why didn't you read it? It's right there. But I just copy and paste it, and it's been good. Yeah, thanks.
I also teach a very large first-year course. One of the biggest challenges about having flexibility with this is the admin.
Yeah.
I know you said, okay, well, you had them do this survey, if you will, of like what their flex days are. But how do you actually implement that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a Microsoft form. I'm happy to send it to you. And then that goes into an Excel file. And if I had the time, I absolutely could write a script to like actually double check to count the days and double check all of that. I haven't, but it would probably take a grad student 2 days to whip up. So, but for other things like that, one of the other things that I want to highlight that I didn't really get time to talk about is if you write 2 tests from the start. So if you know you're going to do test rewrites, just write the 2 tests at the same time. I know that I have always gotten caught in the trap of, oh, here's my great test and I'm so happy about it. And then somebody needs to defer it 2 weeks. And now I'm like, well, I can't reuse that test. The solutions are posted. And I have to like huff and puff and be all cranky about writing a new test. But the whole idea is to have everything administrative situated before you start, so that everything is just smooth sailing. And then I also found that I got way more interesting questions from my students. I got students asking like, well, what's the application of this? And how can I use this in a real world situation? And that's so much more fun than being like, oh, I guess you can write your test on Wednesday. But yeah, if you want any other suggestions, we can talk anytime.
Thank you for a great talk and for many, many helpful things. I've just made notes that I have to go review my policies and my syllabus. This is maybe for everyone as well, because I teach first-year students and second-year students, and they're learning about policies and learning about reading syllabi, and they don't read the syllabi. And then on top of it, they're learning about accommodations and about considerations. And then they get used to it, and then they go into somebody else's class, and the accommodations and considerations are different. And I think that it's important as we communicate to the students about our way of doing things that we make sure that they know that this is then not the Queen's policy, that there will be a different policy in a different class. Because they learn very quickly, and then they think this is how it's done everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say one of the things that I have done in the past, especially if I'm missing, like if I have everything organized, I'm like, oh, I'm 2% short or 3% short, I'll do a course agreement where it's literally just an on-cue quiz on the syllabus, and they just have to like click through what the policies are. And they can do it as many times as they want, and they have to do it by whatever date in the semester. They have unlimited time, unlimited attempts, but then they're actually engaging with the syllabus, and especially if you have like a weird number. So I have like 3 tests at 18% each, and it ends up being like an awkward 54%. And so you have this 1% that's hanging around, and that's what I do for that. Then they get 0. So yeah, so that's why I make it for marks. So one of the things is that I find that if I want students to do work, I have to pay them for that work by giving them a grade. There will always be students who don't do it. There will always be students who don't read it, and we can prepare for that. There's going to be students who don't care. There's going to be someone who says, dear professor, I know that grades are due tomorrow, and I have done literally nothing all semester. I'm hoping that you can help me out here, please. And we're always going to get that kid. And I have taken it upon myself to say I can't hold that responsibility in my own. If I have someone who doesn't want to do it, who doesn't want to read the syllabus, who doesn't want to engage in this participation only point, that's not for me. That's for them. And I can't take that on, especially when I have 700 other students that I need to pay attention to, 300 of which actually want to be there.